And here we go.
Welcome to the Great Work Insights Podcast by the O.C. Tanner Institute, the show that features the people, the professionals, the thought leaders, and the coolest companies. And now your host, the man navigating the discussion about the culture, the organized chaos, and the best practices that compel great work, Todd Nordstrom.
I was at a luncheon recently where I simply was amazed by the food, tables of options that would delight even the pickiest palate. But I noticed something strange. As the participants in line with me to get our food, as they were cooing over all these food selections, I couldn't help but notice a common and shared conversation. The conversation sounded like something you've all either said or heard before. Does this statement sound familiar when you dine with other people? People will say, "Ooh, look at that fabulous cheesecake," or those French fries. I really shouldn't take any because I'm watching what I eat, but... And after the but, of course, they load up their plate and they enjoy the cheesecake or the French fries. We've all had these conversations with ourselves. They happen at restaurants, they happen at work, they happen at home. Think of the last time you saw that fantastic sizzling promo for your favorite reality TV show, and you said, well, I really should watch that instead of, taking care of the responsibilities that you had planned on doing that evening. Today I want to talk about self-control. Is it something we're born with, or is it something we learn? And if we can learn it, how do we, can we, will we learn it? Our guest today has some insights. Please welcome to the show self-discipline expert, Rory Vaden. Rory, thanks for joining us today.
Hey, thank you for having me, Todd. I'm excited about this.
Rory, you're the New York Times bestselling author of 2 books focusing on self-discipline. Your first bestseller titled Take the Stairs, and your most recent Procrastinate on Purpose. I want to talk about your books in a bit, but before we do, I want to ask you a very straightforward question. What exactly is self-discipline, and why are we apparently so bad at it?
Yeah, well, that's an important question. And we have our own definition that we work from. Basically, to us, self-discipline is the ability to get yourself to do the things you know you should be doing, even when you don't feel like doing them. And of course, the metaphor we use for that is take the stairs. And we believe that that is the common trait of ultra performers, is that they have developed this ability to get themselves to do the things they know they should be doing, even when they don't feel like doing them. Now, the second part of that question about why are we so bad at it is a fascinating question. Of course, it's a huge part of what our whole life is dedicated to exploring. But if I had to say in one sentence, I would say the reason that we're so bad at self-discipline is because we don't understand it. And we have a limited perspective on what it means, and we have all sorts of misconceptions. And the Take the Stairs book is really nothing other than these 7 misconceptions that people have about self-discipline. And so I think part of the reason why the book has been so pervasive and translated into other languages and so forth is because the world is realizing, perhaps for the first time ever, that self-discipline isn't as hard as we think when we know how to think about it the right way.
Huh. That's fascinating. And just the concept of taking the stairs or returning the shopping cart, things like that, people get, and we all know how hard it can seem to go, well, that's 2 flights of stairs or 20 feet to the shopping cart corral, at the grocery store. Fantastic stuff. I think, in the food industry is easy when you talk about self-discipline for people to understand. We see a donut, we want the donut, we eat the donut. But
Sure.
You've built a company that teaches self-discipline to oodles of peoples and organizations around the world. Why is self-discipline so important in the working world?
Well, for us, we really are a coaching company, and sales coaching is the core of what we do at Southwestern Consulting. And so for us, it's real simple. We're trying to help people grow their sales and basically create more margin in their life by providing strategies to help them manage their time. And so, the reason why it matters is because we're just trying to help people increase their performance. And we started to notice this consistent trait in the world's ultra performers. And it's funny because if you find, if you look at all successful people across all different industries, you find that they're being successful actually has little to do with the person's, like their age or their ethnicity or their background or their religious affiliation or even their education level. But the one thing that every single successful person has in common is that successful people, in whatever area of life we're talking about, they have developed the habit of doing the things they know they should be doing, even when they don't feel like doing them. And so we became curious about trying to understand, how do they get themselves to do that? Were they born with it? And what we found was that the most disciplined people in the world, contrary to popular belief, do not like discipline more than the rest of us. What it is, though, is that their brain thinks differently about it. They process their choices based upon a different set of criteria from most people's brains. And because they're making those considerations based upon a different set of calculations, it enables them to choose a path, i.e. take the stairs, that most people wouldn't choose.
That's fascinating. So for the listeners who may be listening and going, all right, self-discipline is about choosing to do the things even when I don't feel like doing them. For those listeners who are saying, well, of course, this is my job and I hate my job. And what's your advice to those people? I never feel like doing it. So how am I going to be self-disciplined?
Well, I mean, if you hate your job, then that's a different question. That's not a self-discipline issue necessarily. But the foundation of this is something called the paradox principle. And it's the first of the 7 sort of take the stairs strategies. And the paradox principle says easy short-term choices lead to difficult long-term consequences. Meanwhile, difficult short-term choices lead to easy long-term consequences. So the great paradox here is that what seems like the easy thing in life, eating whatever we want, saying whatever we want, buying something on credit even though we can't afford it, those things that seem easy are the things that create the more difficult life. And inversely, the things that seem difficult, right? Working harder when you don't feel like it, saving money instead of going to the gym or whatever it is, those are the things that create the easier life. It seems like common sense, but actually there's only a very small percentage of the world who has actually consciously articulated that or codified it, in their own mind, made it real, and that they understand that. See, most of us try to go through life avoiding paying the price, thinking we'll do it later, procrastinating.
Yeah.
What ultra performers realize is problems that are procrastinated on are only amplified. So waiting always makes it worse. It's like procrastination and indulgence are really nothing more than creditors that charge us interest.
Interesting. Let me play devil's advocate for a second, because a lot of the listeners today, they're HR professionals, they're talent development people, and they're probably looking at their organization from that point of view as to how they move people within their organization. Is self-discipline something people really want, or is it one of those things we kind of wish for in a perfect world and then hope it actually never comes true?
Okay, so here's how I would respond to that. Self-discipline, I think, is actually the natural byproduct of a congruent alignment between a person's vision and their short-term actions. So, we said easy short-term choices lead to difficult long-term consequences, and the inverse is also true. A lot of times when people come to us, whether it's an individual who's in coaching, and we have about 900 of those, or if it's a consulting client and we're really structuring their whole sales culture, and they say, well, my people or myself, I've always had this self-discipline issue. What we more often find is it's not that you're struggling from a lack of discipline, as it is that you're struggling from a lack of vision. If you have a crystal clear picture of what you want for your life or for your future or for your job or your quarter or your position or whatever, then there is a naturally strong connection to how the sacrifices you're being asked to make today forward you towards a future that you care about. It thereby creates a context for action to take place, and our discipline engages almost automatically. But if we have a cloudy picture of what we want for the future, or we don't see how the sacrifices we're being asked to make today forward us towards something that we care about, then there is no context for action, and it becomes virtually impossible for anybody to motivate themselves. You can spend all your energy trying to motivate that somebody, but it's kind of a futile attempt to do that. And so what you want to do is spend the sooner you start talking about a person's purpose and less about their daily performance, like the activities, the sooner you'll see an increase in their production. And so it's really about shaping the culture in a way and creating that alignment around a vision, and both the vision for the organization and the vision for each individual person, where they're seeing, like, what are the payoffs of me doing these things? And most people are terrible at creating vision for themselves. And that's what leaders need to do. You need to sit down with people and get to know them and figure out what is the thing that matters most to them. And if you can figure out what that is, and then you can simply make a mental connection for them to how the quote unquote sacrifices you're asking them to make today will forward them to that, their discipline will engage automatically, and they will literally self-manage.
Interesting. Rory, I want to talk about all the areas where self-discipline is important. For example, I'm going to talk about me for a second. I have a hard time going to sleep every night. I actually want to keep working. I work better at night, and I like staying up really late. I love it. But I also have to get up in the morning and then suffer from staying up late. I would hope people would consider me a high performer. Is this a self-discipline issue?
So that's a great question, Todd. And I am the same way. I love working late at night. You would think as a self-discipline guy, I would be, the guy saying, you got to get up at 5 a.m. and don't hit the snooze button and all that stuff.
Yeah, early bird catches the worm, right?
Right. But I love working late at night. And so I would say that's not a self-discipline issue. In fact, that question really ties in well to what our second book, the new one, Procrastinate on Purpose, is all about. And the subtitle of that book is The 5 Permissions to Multiply Your Time. And we talk about how everything you know about time management is wrong. One of them being that everything you hear about time management is logical, but that today time management isn't just logical, it's emotional. And you aren't struggling as much from a discipline issue as you are from a permission issue. It's the permission to say, you know what, if I work until 1 a.m., I don't need to start working until later in the day. And that is a permission thing. And some of that, if you are an employee and you're not running your own business, some of that requires getting permission and agreements from your leaders. But multipliers do not care about people just getting tasks done or fitting into some system. One of the other common catchphrases you hear about time management that the multipliers basically exploded in the research that we published in the new book was, you hear efficiency is about doing things right, effectiveness is about doing the right things. Well, multipliers basically came out and said, we don't care about either of those because it's not about doing things at all. All we care about is producing results. And producing results is not efficiency or effectiveness. The word for that is efficacy. And so hopefully if you can figure out a way to have a culture that is really focused on results, and you have enough trust to where you can allow people to have some flexibility to accomplish the results the way that they get there, as long as it's ethical and honest, really shouldn't matter that much.
Interesting. So let's talk about your books now, and let's take a step back. First, I want to hear about Take the Stairs, which is something I do, by the way, because I feel like it's just saving time, then I don't have to exercise as much. But tell us about the focus of Take the Stairs, and maybe who would be the perfect reader that would need Take the Stairs?
So Take the Stairs was really about the psychology of overcoming procrastination, increasing self-discipline, and helping people shift their mindset so that they could do the things they know they should be doing that they don't feel like doing. And the connection or the intersection point between Take the Stairs and Procrastinate on Purpose will kind of answer this question, because in Take the Stairs, we talk about 3 different types of procrastination. There's classic procrastination, which is consciously delaying what you know you should be doing. And then creative avoidance, which is a phrase I really love because that described what I had, which was unconsciously creating things for yourself to do so you could do those things as a way of looking productive, but really what you're doing is avoiding doing the things you need to be doing that you don't feel like doing.
I love that. I see my kids doing that all the time. Go clean your room, and it's like they find everything else to do instead of. I love that.
Yeah, so that's creative avoidance. And Take the Stairs was really about those two. And so in different areas of our life, we struggle with those too. But we mentioned in Take the Stairs this third type, this new type of procrastination that we really started noticing with leaders. When we first started coaching, we were really only coaching salespeople. But then in the last 4 years, we really started working a lot with executives, the VP of sales, the director of sales, the owner, the sales manager. And we noticed a new type of procrastination, and this one is truly fascinating. We call it priority dilution. And priority dilution, unlike classic procrastination or creative avoidance, priority dilution affects the chronic overachiever. It affects the mover and shaker. It affects the hustler. It affects the do-gooders, the people who are trying to do a good job. Unlike the first two, which are more affect kind of someone who's disengaged or apathetic or lazy, even. But the net result is the same, that the mover and shaker leaves the day with their most significant priorities left unchecked, not out of laziness, but because as their star has risen, more and more has been put on their plate, and naturally their priorities start to dilute. And so it's this, and we mentioned that in Take the Stairs, and almost every major media appearance we got, we're on Fox national TV and all that, people were interested in priority dilution. And so we said, wow, this really hit a hot button. And so that's why we dedicated the next 3 years to really diving into priority dilution, the outcome of which is Procrastinate on Purpose, which just came out a couple weeks ago.
So give me an example of priority dilution. Is this like would an example be, you spend your entire day in meetings and then you don't get what is your top priority done? Or is it something else?
Absolutely. That's a great example. I mean, email is the number one cause of all priority dilution in a practical sense. The chronic overachiever has this almost frenetic desire to be checking email constantly every second of the day, thinking, we convince ourselves that I'm going to pick them off one by one as they come in, but not realizing what the net cost is to our focus. We make some really compelling mathematical calculations as to what the massive negative impact of that kind of stuff is. But those are a couple really ubiquitous examples, emails and meetings.
Tell me a story of maybe somebody you've worked with, and you don't have to name them, but where you've seen just transformation after working with them and them realizing maybe how much time they were wasting, or how they were, off-putting their biggest priority.
Yeah. So one of our clients is let's just leave them anonymous.
Sure.
But one of the concepts in the book that we introduce is called MVOT, MVOT, and it stands for money value of time. Not to be confused with the time value of money, which is the future value of money invested. But money value of time is to say all of us have an MVOT. Take whatever your annual salary is or your total earnings. It doesn't matter if you're commission-based or profits or, salary or whatever, and divide that by the amount of time that you spend working, and you come up with your MVOT. So we took this one particular client through MVOT and did this calculation with some of their executives, and they looked at how much it was costing them to do their Monday morning meetings. And it caused them to really challenge who needed to be in the room. And they basically divided up their people into two categories. The first group of people are what they call need to be. Those are people who need to be in the meeting. The second group is called need to know. Those are the people who need to know the outcome or the decisions that were made in the meeting. And so what they were doing as a mistake of trying to include everybody is they were taking everybody who needs to know and including them in the meeting. And the result was the meetings were taking forever. They were getting off track. The decisions weren't being made. And so instead, they figured out who needs to be in the meeting, which is a few people. They quickly make the decisions, and then they communicate out to the people who need to know. So if you just look at the money value of time of all of the people who, they went from something like an average, like you might have 10 or 12 people in a meeting down to more like 2 or 3. And you add up the cost of the meeting every single week and the savings from having 9 people that are no longer in that meeting and every single week, it's a huge amount of money. One of the things that we realized is that the next generation of cost savings for companies is not so much in saving money, it's in saving time. It's not so much in figuring out how can we negotiate with our vendors to get our paper clips cheaper, although that's still valuable. But it's amazing that every single company does audits on how they spend their dollars. They would never run a business without having a budget. Meanwhile, we ignore the gigantic, gaping, cavernous maw of all the ways that we waste our time. And we ignore MVOT, which is a very real cost. It's just an invisible cost. Very similar to how we said procrastination is the most expensive invisible cost in business today. And so there's all sorts of examples like that. Another client that we had, Todd, when we did this MVOT thing, they went on a radical mission to eliminate the CC, people being CC'd unnecessarily on emails.
I can hear the audience laughing at that one right now because we're all so familiar with it.
It's just crazy. And what they were saying is they said, look, if it takes you 30 seconds to read the beginning of an email at minimum, just to determine to decide whether or not you even need to be on that chain. And let's say that happens 5 times a day. That's about 3 minutes a day that are wasted. Well, with this particular company, they had 4,000 employees. So that's 12 minutes a day, or over the course of a month, it's about 240,000 minutes. So it's the equivalent of 25 people doing nothing but reading unnecessary reply all emails.
Oh, that makes me smile. Rory, thank you so much for joining us today. For the audience members who want to learn more about you, you're really easy to find because you've been covered by so much media. So you could just, Google your name. But if they want to get directly with you, what's the best place to find you online?
Yeah, I would say we some of this stuff is so radical related to time management. I mean, literally, we talk about balance is bogus. Multitasking is a myth. We really end up crushing a lot of these old cliches and the old paradigm of thinking. And so we created a free webinar, which people can go. If you go to procrastinateonpurpose.com, you can watch a free webinar. You can be exposed to this whole methodology of how to multiply your time, which in one sentence, we used to tell people the way you multiply time is by giving yourself the emotional permission to spend time on things today that create more time tomorrow. So give yourself the permission to go to Procrastinate on Purpose, watch the free 1-hour webinar, and then they can get links to the book and, social media and find out what, other ways to keep in touch if they're interested.
Rory, thank you. Thanks again. Fascinating stuff. Honored to have you on the show.
Oh, Todd, thank you for having me. And, just remember, no matter who you are, success is never owned, success is only rented, and the rent is due every day.
OC Tanner has helped the world's top companies improve innovation through employee recognition. Learn what insights are in store for your company. Visit octanner.com today.